In the early 12th century, the Kingdom of Georgia stood on the brink of collapse. For decades, Seljuk Turkic forces and their allied emirates had dominated the Caucasus. They raided Georgian lands, depopulated villages, and enforced a crippling tribute. Georgia wasn't just losing territory, it was losing its future, its culture, and its very identity. The once proud kingdom was being systematically dismantled, its people scattered, and its hope fading into the cold mountain fog. For the Georgians of that era, it must have felt like the end of the world, a slow, grinding erasure with no clear path to survival. The kingdom was fighting a war it could not win, against an enemy that seemed to have limitless resources and an unquenchable thirst for conquest. Every year, the frontier shrank and the darkness drew closer. From this devastation rose David IV of Georgia, a king who would earn the name David the Builder. He inherited a shattered kingdom, a mere shadow of its former self, but he refused to accept its fate. David was a visionary and a pragmatist. He understood that to save Georgia, he first had to remake it. He launched sweeping military reforms, transforming a disorganized militia into a professional, disciplined army. He centralized power, breaking the influence of fractious nobles and uniting the realm under his firm control. And, in a brilliant strategic move, he invited tens of thousands of Kipchak warriors from the northern steppes to settle in Georgia, integrating them into his new military machine. He wasn't just patching up a broken state, he was forging a new one from the ground up, a nation hardened by adversity and prepared for the ultimate confrontation. In the summer of 1121, that confrontation arrived. A vast coalition army, led by the Seljuk commander Ilghazi, marched into Georgia. It was a multinational force composed of troops from the Great Seljuk Sultanate, various allied Muslim emirates, and Arab Bedouin mercenaries. Their goal was singular and absolute: to crush the resurgent Georgian kingdom once and for all and put an end to David's defiance. Contemporary chroniclers, both Christian and Muslim, described an army of staggering size, a force so large that it seemed the very earth shook beneath its march. Against this tide of steel, David's army looked impossibly small. To the outside world, the outcome seemed certain. The final chapter of Georgian history was about to be written in blood. This was meant to be the final, decisive blow. But David did not retreat. He did not wait for the siege of his capital. Instead, he advanced to meet the invaders. He understood that a conventional battle against such odds was suicide. His strategy relied on something else: the terrain. He deliberately drew the massive coalition army into the narrow valleys near a place called Didgori. Here, the steep, wooded hillsides negated the Seljuks' greatest advantage: their numbers. The vast army was compressed, its formations disrupted, and its ability to maneuver severely restricted. As the coalition force lumbered into the confined space, a small detachment of Georgian horsemen approached them. Appearing to be deserters, offering to switch sides. It was a calculated deception, a psychological trap designed to sow confusion and lower the enemy's guard right before the critical moment. At the pre-planned signal, the deception ended. The deserters suddenly turned and attacked the Seljuk commanders. Simultaneously, David unleashed his main force. Georgian heavy cavalry, a thundering wall of iron and fury, smashed into the enemy's vanguard with devastating force. Before the coalition's leadership could even process what was happening, more Georgian troops, who had been hidden on the surrounding hillsides, slammed into their flanks. The coordinated, multi-pronged assault created immediate and catastrophic chaos. The coalition's command structure, which was the brain of the massive army, was decapitated in the opening moments of the fight. There was no one left to give orders, to rally the men, or to organize a defense. In an instant, confusion turned into sheer, unadulterated panic. What followed was not a prolonged battle, but a complete and total rout. The coalition army, a force that had seemed invincible just hours before, completely disintegrated. Lacking leadership and trapped in the narrow valley, the soldiers broke and fled. The fight became a 3-day pursuit, as the disciplined Georgians hunted down the scattered remnants of the enemy force. Thousands were killed, and thousands more were captured, including many of the coalition's high-ranking emirs. The battlefield was littered with abandoned weapons, armor, priceless war banners, and the personal tents of the commanders. In a single day, the great Seljuk-led army had ceased to exist as a coherent fighting force. It was a victory so absolute, so one-sided, that it became known in Georgian history as the miraculous victory. The victory at Didgori was a geopolitical earthquake. It shattered Seljuk power in the region and completely altered the balance of power in the Caucasus. The threat that had loomed over Georgia for generations was broken in a single afternoon. With his enemies scattered, David marched on the city of Tbilisi the following year in 1122. He captured the ancient city, which had been under Muslim rule for centuries, and restored it as the capital of his unified kingdom. The Battle of Didgori was the watershed moment that ushered in Georgia's golden age. The next century would be a period of unprecedented military strength, political stability, economic prosperity, and a magnificent flourishing of Georgian culture, art, and architecture that would define the nation forever. So, why does Didgori still matter? The battle stands as one of history's clearest and most dramatic demonstrations of masterful strategic warfare. It teaches us that victory is not always decided by numbers. David the Builder used terrain, intelligence, deception, discipline, and perfect timing to overcome a numerically superior foe. He turned his enemy's greatest strength into their fatal weakness. The battle is a timeless lesson in leadership and strategy. It also serves as a stark reminder that empires and great powers often fall not just through military defeat, but through their own arrogance and overconfidence. The Seljuks underestimated David. They underestimated the terrain, and they paid the ultimate price for their hubris. In the collective memory of the Georgian people, Didgori is far more than just a famous military victory. It is the defining moment of their national story. It represents the point where a nation on the verge of extinction refused to surrender, chose survival over submission, and through courage and genius, forged its own destiny against impossible odds. It is the symbol of resilience, unity, and the indomitable will to endure. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, please consider subscribing for more stories from history.